Morning, everyone. My name is Chris Harvey, and currently I am the Deputy Executive Director of the Georgia Peace Officer Standards and Training Council. It's most commonly referred to as POST. And we are the state agency that's responsible for certifying all the peace officers in the state of Georgia. That's every police officer, sheriff deputy, correction officer, parole officer, detention officer, about 60,000 total. So basically anybody that has almost any law enforcement authority is certified by us. If you think about POST being for police and law enforcement, sort of like the state bar is for lawyers or the medical board is for doctors. If somebody violates a standard, then they can be sanctioned by the board. They can have their certification revoked, which means they cannot operate as a peace officer in Georgia anymore, or they could be sanctioned, they could be put on probation, they could have additional training required. And so we work with every police officer in the state of Georgia, every peace officer. And it's interesting that in Georgia, we talk about peace officers and their job is to keep the peace. And that applies to everybody. But from 2015 to 2015 until mid-2021, my job was as the state elections director for the state of Georgia. And prior to that, I spent about 20 years in law enforcement, mostly in the metro Atlanta area, mostly working in homicide, and then working in elections as the chief investigator for the Secretary of State's office. So I've got a lot of experience in a lot of different fields. And after the elections in 2018 and especially 2020, we noticed some changes that were taking place in elections. And I think Fernando wanted me to come on here and talk a little bit about some of the work that I've been doing with another organization that's designed primarily to safeguard people that are working in the elections environment, poll workers, election officials, and things like that, because the climate has changed, as I'm sure everybody's aware. So let me talk about some of that stuff. We got here some statistics, and these were generated by the Brennan Center in New York, when it talks about election officials being threatened. 17% have been threatened because of their job as a local election official. And this is generally an election official at the county level. You know, every county in Georgia has its own election office and has its own election director. And then you see to the right, you see the numbers about threats to election officials increased, decreased, or stayed the same. And you can see, obviously, they're increasing dramatically and sadly, but that's certainly what people are facing. We move on to, was it reported to law enforcement? Notice that it's overwhelmingly something that's reported to local law enforcement. And I've got a personal story to tell about that in just a couple of minutes. But the fact is the federal government and the state government are getting a little bit more involved in election threats. The FBI has started, or the Department of Justice rather, has started an election threat task force that's designed to try to deal with large election threats that are taking place throughout the country. They assist state police in intelligence gathering and threat assessment, but it really comes down to the county police, the county sheriff, the city police, who are going to respond to a call of a threat, whether somebody gets a threatening email, whether they get a threatening phone call, whether they get threatened in person at their office. These things are happening with more and more regularity. These are a couple examples of some threats that have been received in Georgia, and I apologize for the strong language, but it is what it is. You can read that yourself. You see that they're talking about bombing polling places. They're talking about just terrible things. This went out to a bunch of different counties in Georgia in 2020, something that more counties in Georgia than you would think got this kind of email. Here are a couple of other emails that were received in Georgia. As most of you probably know, Secretary Raffensperger received death threats. He and his family received death threats, and was under 24-hour law enforcement protection, as did other people in the Secretary of State's office, including me. This is the threat that I got. This was on the afternoon before the runoff election in January, when the 2 Senate seats were up. And I got this email, my personal email, telling me my days are numbered. They're gonna kill me. You can see they put a picture of my house on the dark web. They put my home address. They put some crosshairs on my head and said that I was going to be killed because I didn't do something with the absentee ballots, even though that wasn't my responsibility. But I live in the city of Decatur, and I called the chief of Decatur, and within 2 hours, I had a police car in front of my house that they kept out there for about 3 weeks, which is why the local response is going to be critical. I also called the FBI and reported to them, but the FBI is not set up and isn't geared to these kinds of granular issues. I knew it was going to be the local law enforcement that was going to offer protection to me and my family, and they did, and they did a great job. But this is becoming more and more common. This was relatively unheard of before these kinds of things started happening after the 2020 election. But if you read the newspapers at all, listen to the radio, you hear that these things are happening more and more. And it's really putting a strain on the election system. I can tell you that in about 6 of the most populous counties in Georgia, this election that's happening next week, in Fulton County, DeKalb County, Gwinnett County, Richmond County, Bibb County, and Chatham County, some of the largest counties, they're all going to have brand new election directors. This will be their first election because everybody else left. They got tired of doing it. So you're having a tremendous brain drain, you're having experience drain, you're having an integrity drain because people simply don't want to have their lives threatened and upended because of doing their jobs. And I can say, I worked with all 159 counties for 6 years, actually longer than 6 years. And they're some of the most earnest, hardworking, dedicated public servants that I've ever worked with. And they just want to do a good job. And there's no reason in the world why they should have to put up with this garbage, but they do. Let's move on. I'm working with a group called the Committee for Safe and Secure Elections. And I do this sort of in conjunction with my work at Post, but the Committee for Safe and Secure Elections is a bipartisan group, or cross-partisan group, really. It's made up of groups from the left and groups from the right and groups from the center. And it's primarily election officials with national and local experience and law enforcement. And our goal is to work for the protection of election officials and the protection of the election system. And it's really designed to build the kind of relationships that we need, primarily with law enforcement, but also with other community groups, so that everybody understands what's happening in elections. And I really believe that if people understood elections well, including law enforcement, including community active groups, there would be a lot less of the misinformation would be much less of a problem. So starting earlier this year, I've been in probably 7 or 8 states talking with law enforcement, talking with election officials, trying to get them to speak each other's language, because for years, election people have worked sort of in their own little world. Elections were boring for a long time, which was nice. But now elections aren't boring anymore. And when you get all these outside forces making allegations, doing misinformation campaigns, and compromising the validity of elections or the confidence in the validity of elections, you really start to erode the foundations of our democracy from within. And so our job is to go around the country, speak with people, and help these different groups work together. And again, it's to build trust and stronger relationships between law enforcement and elections, to create resources for law enforcement and elections, and to do whatever we can to respond effectively to these threats when they happen. Because it is a crime to threaten somebody's life. It's a felony in Georgia to make a terroristic threat. And those things should be prosecuted just like any other threat or any other crime. We're really dealing with a new kind of domestic violence when we talk about threats to election officials and threats to the election system. If you think back, when I started policing in the early mid-90s, domestic violence was something that they had really just started to get their hands on. For generations before that, that was one of the most vexing calls for law enforcement to respond to, because they would go to a domestic call and the victim would often say, "Oh, I don't want to prosecute. It'll be okay. He won't do it again." And so the police's hands were tied. They couldn't really respond. And what happened too often was that the police would leave and then the violence would continue until it escalated into something tragic. And the laws changed throughout the country. For now, for example, if police respond to a domestic violence call and there's evidence of violence, they have to make an arrest. They're required by law to make an arrest. Elections are sort of entering that same phase. When all the threats came in at 2020 and after 2020, law enforcement didn't really know how to respond. Some people thought, well, this is just people blowing off steam. This isn't a real threat. Nobody's really going to do anything. And so it was kind of brushed to the side. Well, just like domestic violence had such a corrosive effect of primarily on people that were unable to really defend themselves, it's the same with election officials. Election officials can't really fight back. They're just absorbing these threats and these blows. And so we wanted to make sure that law enforcement understood how elections work, what election officials are going through, and learn how they can partner with them in a way that's not oppressive, in a way that doesn't intimidate voters. They can work behind the scenes. There are a lot of different things that can be done in a way that enhances the security of elections, the security of election officials, and the confidence that the community has. And so that's sort of the balance that we've tried to strike, because as probably everyone on this call knows, if you go back a couple of decades, a couple of generations, law enforcement and elections weren't always happy partners. And there was a time in our history when law enforcement did not have a particularly noble role in elections, and presence of law enforcement at polling places were designed to sometimes intimidate people and keep people from voting. And so being aware of that history, certainly in Georgia and in other states and other parts of the country, we wanted to sort of tread a little bit lightly and say, how can we do this with the least impact on the community? So how can we deliver effectiveness without the allegations of suppressing people, intimidating people, scaring people from voting? And that's really what we've tried to do. So we try to build the relationships. We try to support and come up with policies that that both sides can use, and then we try to equip and provide resources primarily for law enforcement so that they understand how elections work a little bit better. And one of the things we've done in Georgia, and this just came out last week, we developed a pocket guide, which is a little pocket card that police officers can put in their pocket that has a whole slew of election laws that deal with things like interfering with elections, interfering with election officials, intimidating voters, all these kinds of laws that no police officer in Georgia has really ever heard of because it's buried in the election code. Cops know, murder and armed robbery and rape and kidnapping and battery, but they're not aware of these laws. So we've gotten this pocket guide out that every law enforcement officer in Georgia has available not the entire, but the primary election laws that they may have to respond to if they get called to a polling place or they get called to an election event. And I could go on and on, but I know I'm coming up on my time, and I want to respect everyone's time and Fernando's time in having me. But that's essentially what we're doing: resources for election administrators, resources for law enforcement. We want people to meet, share, agree, plan, and practice. And what we've also done that I think is important for this group to understand is when the law enforcement world and the election people come together to come up with a plan, we encourage them to go out to their community and go to their community groups, go to the ACLU, go to the NAACP, go to the Latin American associations, whatever it is, or the Asian American associations in their community, and talk with them about what they're doing. Explain why they might have a police officer or a sheriff's deputy at a polling place, or explain why they're not. If they decide they need a police officer present, maybe they could be in plain clothes. Maybe that would have less of an effect. Every county's a little bit different. Every community's a little bit different. And the people that know those communities best are the election officials, the local law enforcement, and the community groups that operate within that community. So it's really about building bridges, building relationships. And we boil it down to kind of a two-word phrase: connect and protect. If we get everybody connected, we're going to keep everybody protected. So I'll just forward through these. That's a little bit more detail. But I'm happy to be here. I'll stay on. I'll be happy to answer questions at whatever point Fernando deems appropriate. And I'm just happy to be here and spread the word.
Thank you very much for that presentation. Very important to realize and people to know that we are creating a connection between the police and the community. It is important to let them, the community, as you said, to every county, everybody's different. Every county has different issues, different needs. So I'm glad that you are providing us with this information. And again, having mediators and peacemakers that we are trained to do de-escalate, to work with people, members of the community, create another layer of security for the police officer, or as well to be in a situation they know they have somebody also looking for them, whatever is they needed to prevent or de-escalate a situation together, work as a team. There is a question that Michael has. Please talk about what constitutes a threat.
That's a good question, and it's one that is the typical sort of law enforcement lawyer answer is it depends a little bit. In Georgia, the code on terroristic threats has to be a threat. There's a difference between a harassment or blowing off steam or threatening. If somebody were to call up and say, you know, I think you guys are doing a terrible job in elections, that's not a threat. But when somebody says, you know, we're coming to kill you, or I'm going to blow up a polling place, when they offer to do violence with something like that, that generally constitutes a threat. There's a little bit of gray area in there, depends on all the circumstances and specifics, but there is a difference between somebody blowing off steam and somebody making a direct threat of violence.
And also, you know, it's good for you to know, Chris, also as well, that every mediator in the state of Georgia had to pass a criminal background. We all have to be registered with the state of Georgia, with the Supreme Court of the state of Georgia, the Georgia Office of Dispute and Resolution. So you know that the person, we had to have a clean background, a criminal background, in order to participate as a mediator. And then we had the people who will participate as a peacemaker. The majority of us are mediator at the same time. So I think it's a great opportunity to create that connection, and that's the role of ANGCMC to train, educate, and inform people and provide resources like, you know, like where to go to get more detailed information, what is the police officer supposed to do, accountability. It is important to hold them to accountability, the community as well the authorities. If we work together, we can definitely keep promoting peace and make our life better, safer than what we have right now due to the tension that we are living right now. Please go ahead. If you have any question, Kayla, or anybody there? Okay. Dion, please go ahead with your presentation. Oh, by the way, can you make these slides available?
I'm not sure what you mean by making them available.
And with the presentation, I'm gonna, because you presented already on and it's recorded. What I'm going to do is, like I said, put it on the website, and
I can send the presentation to you if that's what you.
That would be great.
Okay, I can email it to you when we're done.
Awesome, thank you. Okay,
thank you very much, Chris.
Yeah, Chris, thank you very much. That was very educational. So
you're welcome.
Well, Chris, in addition to it being very educational, it's very timely. I may need to speak to you. I would like to speak to you after this this presentation about a particular issue that I'm having that you may be able to advise me on.
I'd be happy to. I'll put my number in the chat and you can call me.
I appreciate that, sir. So can everyone see this screen okay?
Yes.
Good.
Yes.
As I said very early on, before everyone joined, my name is Dion Lyons. I am a conciliation specialist with the United States Department of Justice Community Relations Service. And I know most people don't know what a conciliation specialist is. I had never heard of it until I applied for this job. And many people have not even heard of the Community Relations Service. So I'll tell you what it is and some of the things that we do. And then I'd like to talk maybe a little more specifically about some of the things I've personally had to respond to, and maybe be able to answer some questions about those in the areas of hate crimes, etc. Please feel free to interrupt at any time with questions. You don't have to put them in the chat, but that's fine as well. So what is CRS? CRS stands for Community Relations Service. We are a very small agency buried within the Department of Justice. We were created under Title IX, Title 10 of the Civil Rights Act of 64. And in the 60s, of course, there was a civil rights movement in this country. And the biggest issues were race, color, and national origin. So that was our original jurisdiction. In 2009, that jurisdiction expanded because of the Hate Crimes Prevention Act. And that expanded our ability to respond. So now we can respond to any of the 8 protected areas of gender, gender identity, sexual orientation, religion, disability, or race, color, or national origin. So when I say respond, there's 4 things that we do, but we do everything under this umbrella of impartiality, of voluntariness, meaning our services are of no cost to anyone that we provide them to, because we are employees of the federal government. They're confidential under a very severe confidentiality mandate that applies to me and to us in CRS, so that if we were to violate that agreement, we are personally liable under criminal statutes. So we don't want to go to jail, so we will keep your confidence. We're not allowed to say who came to what meeting, who invited who, or what we talked about, or any of that without the permission of the parties that were there. And voluntary means you don't have to do anything. We don't investigate, we don't arrest, we don't prosecute. I am not a law enforcement officer. I am not a prosecutor, at least not anymore, not in this job. So we don't have any ability to coerce anyone to work with us. The only way we get people to work with us is by establishing trust, establishing effectiveness, and based on a track record of being successful in resolving cases that where the community has had a conflict with either another group in the community or with an agency of the government of any kind. And I'll get into a little more detail about that. These are the 4 things that we do. We either facilitate dialogues, meaning we convene the parties, and that's the thing we do the most often and the most effectively, is to bring parties together who may have conflicts with each other or with other entities such as government agencies. And one great example of that you can relate to, instead of talking pie in the sky, say there was a police-involved shooting and the community was upset because maybe the law enforcement officer happened to be of one race and the victim of another. This can sometimes and frequently cause community outcries and accusations, etc. And then you would just see a media storm. Our job would be then to come in and try to identify the issues and try to bring the stakeholders to the table to try to come up with a solution that would restore calm. Sometimes that can be simply consultation, meaning I would say to that community and those stakeholders things that other communities who face similar concerns have done that have helped in the past. The most important thing that I'm able to do, and the key reason why we are organized under the Department of Justice, is because a lot of times elected officials and law enforcement agencies are reluctant to come to the table with communities. So being under the Department of Justice allows me to kind of sometimes break down some of those doors. It can be both an advantage and a disadvantage to be with DOJ. The advantage is it allows me to be able to get into the door, the police chief may allow me to bring him to the table more readily because we are on the same team. However, it may hurt when the other people that we're trying to bring to the table, the community activists or stakeholders, may have distrust for government agencies, and we fall under the U.S. government. So it can cut both ways. Our biggest ability, though, has been the ability to bring parties who have opposing views to the table. Once I get people to the table, I can usually find common ground. That's the other thing we do is mediate, which is a little more formal way of achieving the same result. It's more structured, produces written agreements, whereas usually a facilitated dialogue will just allow us to find that common ground to be able to work together to resolve problems. Consultation is bringing the knowledge of what has happened and what has been successful in other communities to the table. And then we do very formal trainings. We have trainings for specific situations in specific communities, such as there's a traditionally difficult relationship between law enforcement and the transgender community and sometimes the LGBTQ community. So we have a specific training that addresses those needs. Back in 2011, when there was a huge misunderstanding about the Sikh and Arab community and the Muslim community, we had specific trainings to try to bridge those gaps, and so on and so forth. So that's who we are and what we do. These are the communities we work with. Literally any organization in any community, be it a race-based, religious-based, ideology-based community, it doesn't really matter. We don't do individual cases. We leave that to law enforcement. But the fallout behind individual cases can involve many different organizations, and that's where we come in. Usually after the critical incident has happened, we try to establish relationships beforehand, but we are a very small agency. There are literally only 33 of us in the agency spread across the country. I work in Region 4, the Southeast region, the Atlanta headquarters of 8 states in the Southeast region. And I'm responsible for, by myself, responding to community conflicts in the states of Georgia and North Carolina, and recently also Kentucky. So later on, we can get into some of the details of the incidents I've responded to and what has been good and what has been bad. So we get involved with community conflicts where there's tension in the community, especially if it falls under one of the 8 categories I mentioned before. And so the broad category.
I'm sorry,
Yes.
I have a quick question. How are you connected to a particular situation? Do you have to be invited by one of the parties, or can you proactively reach out to a subgroup in a community and offer your services?
Sir, that is one of the most common questions that we have, and it's an excellent question. I should have probably started there when I was laying the groundwork. One of the things, one of the ways that to just broadly answer the question, we can self-involve or we can be invited. We prefer to be invited into a community by a group that is already familiar with us and has a level of trust, because, as I said, we have no authority to make anyone work with us. So it would be better if people knew who we were and were willing to work with us and invite us in when they see a problem in advance. But we often end up doing triage because, as I mentioned, we're a very small agency. There's only 13 agents like me on the ground, conciliation specialists who actually go and do the work. And each of us is spread out in different regions around the country. So we have to kind of scan the news and see what is the most pressing community issue out there and respond to those as a matter of priority. Unfortunately, we can't get to many and most issues that would ideally benefit from our assistance. But yes, we can involve ourselves if it is a situation that falls under our 8 areas and has a community outcry. That makes
Thanks.
sense. Yes, sir. So the 3 areas that our services generally fall upon are the administration of justice, which is pretty popular. This is when there are conflicts between police and community organizations, when there are controversial incidents such as George Floyd, Ahmaud Arbery, Breonna Taylor, et cetera, and on and on. And many of those we have been directly involved in. Alleged bias or hate incidents and hate crimes that involve the administration of justice are a particular concern of ours at this time. So that's why, Chris, I'm very concerned about election violence as it's going to become, we expect, a big issue in the next couple of, in this month probably. Education, most colleges and universities have their own means and their own mechanisms for handling issues that arise in any of those 8 areas: race, color, national origin, disability, LGBTQ issues, gender identity, or disability. And so they generally don't like to have their issues aired publicly. So it's harder to get entry into universities. We do work a lot in schools because they're usually under-resourced, high schools, et cetera. And if they have a internal problem between their students, we have a couple of programs geared specifically towards facilitating dialogues with students so that they can come to their own agreements, identify their own issues, and have some ways, some tools we can give them to resolve those issues before they become big ones. Under general community relations, there are things that come up all the time between groups in a community that don't necessarily involve law enforcement. Sometimes the community itself has their own challenges with, say, a race-based group or religious-based group. There's lots of graffiti, et cetera, against the Jewish community specifically right now. That's a huge concern and a growing one. So we've been responding quite a bit to those issues. These are some of the things that we do.
When you say respond, what immediately do you do?
Here are some examples of some of the responses that we have, some of the specific programs that are in place to respond to specific issues or typical issues. For instance, if I use the example of a police-involved shooting earlier, there's a program called SPCP, Strengthening Police and Community Relationships, where we bring community members together who have concerns. Usually those community members would be stakeholders in the community, such as organizations like the NAACP, even Black Lives Matter, et cetera. We will bring them together if there is a race issue with the police-involved shooting, try to get them to come up with something concrete that might help to prevent such a tragedy in the future, and try and bring those who could implement those ideas together to consider them. And that usually helps. Sometimes people want to vent. That's not really our purpose, but sometimes these types of events will allow people to do so in a controlled manner that actually results in an actionable action plan that can be implemented, or at least in part. And that usually helps to reduce tension when people feel like they're being heard.
Mm-hmm.
So in schools, there is a program called Student Problem Identification and Resolution of Issues Together. We call it School Spirit. Similar to SPCP, except that we usually bring students together who have challenges with each other and getting along. If there's a racial incident or a racial slur, sometimes there's bullying of transgender and LGBTQ students, etc. This is a great program to bring the students themselves together and have them articulate their concerns and come up with constructive solutions on their own that they can then implement. And then we leave the school with a tool. We bring students that participated in the program. The tool is called a Spirit Council, and they'll take the action plan that was developed and go through the process of working with the administration to get those things implemented, any changes they came up with. Kayla?
Are you ever not welcomed in a school? Like I'm thinking where I live, like in Pickens County, North Georgia, you know, I don't know how, if you're not, if you don't have to be that, like, I don't know how welcoming. Do you ever get
Yes.
unwelcomed by a school? They don't want your services.
Not just by a school, but
Yeah.
by many organizations in the community. Sometimes they just don't want government assistance. And even if we're not law enforcement, we are associated with the Department of Justice, and sometimes they are not welcome. Sometimes we can't get organizations to come to the table because of suspicion and concern about government agencies.
That's
And
so sad
because
that they would turn down that help that you don't even have to help. You know, you're not, you know,
Right.
you're doing it out of the goodness of your heart. So I could see it being unfortunate and discouraging if you get turned down by trying to help these schools, these children come to the table. And so thank you for what you're doing. But yeah.
Well, I very much appreciate that. I think part of the problem is that we are not well known, and that is partially because we are such a small agency, and because we don't highlight ourselves in the media. We give credit for any agreements that are made to those parties that came to the agreement. So most people don't know who we are, and usually haven't heard of us until something happens, unless we've had the ability to work with them in advance, which is rare because we are so small and so spread out. But we do have a pretty good track record, and that's usually what we lead with when we're trying to gain entry into a community. So that's where the consultation comes in, and talking about what we've done in other places that may be similar. Protecting places of worship is a very strong program we have that has been active lately in defacing of religious artifacts and facilities. Dialogue on Race is a program that is often called upon when there are conflicts between racial groups in a community. A bias incident and hate crime forum is something we'll do when there is a community that has experienced a hate crime or threats, such as Mr. Harvey was discussing a little earlier. And what that does is kind of bring law enforcement's attention to the community. It explains to them what each level and each organization of law enforcement in that community does and how to access them. And it helps to bring focus to the issue, and that helps to make the community more confident that they'll be taken care of. Contingency planning and event marshal training are things that we can do to reduce tension between community groups who are upset and want to make their points known, but want to do so in such a way that they don't become in opposition to law enforcement. They want to work with law enforcement to protest peacefully. So we'll show them how to do that and to prepare for contingency planning when they expect a high-risk event. So at this point,
Dion. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Sure. No, at this point, I would like to open this discussion up for, specifics or questions. And and any details that you'd like for me to go into based on the things that I've experienced in practicing in this field in the last 9 years.
Well, thank you very much for your presentation. I appreciate it. If there's anybody who has a question, Dion, if you can share your information as well as Chris did, that'd be great.
Yes,
I
sir.
wanted to also do the presentation in the 15 minutes, less than 15 minutes, of what we're planning to do and what's the goal of the ANG CMC. Okay, and I'm going to put this together with your presentation. Dion, we could be another layer of support when you go to different counties. If we are able to create and put together a community mediation center in every county, you will have a mediator of that area, of that county, who knows the issues of that county. The same thing with Chris, we will be another layer of support. When something happens, you know that this organization connect with the CMC of that county and be able to have some sort of support or layer of security, you know, to trust. Because now the goal of our organization is to build trust with the community, explaining, educating, and informing about the role of the local authorities and also the role of the mediators and the responsibility the community has to the authorities and vice versa. So accountability is very important, but we had to do that by building trust, educating, informing every member of the community. And I believe personally, the CMC in every county will be very helpful to everyone. I'm going to begin with my presentation. If you don't mind, I'm going to share that with you here. The North Georgia Community Mediation Center, you know, our slogan is "Peace building in our hand. Let's work together." Okay, we are a 501c3, and there is the information. We are authorized. We are registered with the state of Georgia, and we have the business license of the county, Jackson County. The vision and mission is the vision to live the belief that we can realize the commonality between us in the face of all our differences, living in a community in a prosperous town, county, and nation by connecting, conversing, and listening to each other. A world where safety, education, health, peace, justice, with equity, equality, and opportunity to pursue happiness based on our abilities, capability exists for all. That's our vision. Now, our mission is empower the community by providing what is needed to understand our society's rule and laws through information, education, and training, promoting peace building and conflict prevention, finding resolution to differences that affect our daily activities. Offer to those in conflict a facilitated opportunity to come to the table, be part of the conversation, and resolve differences in order to continue our life in peaceful relationship. That's our vision. We all want peace, justice, safety, health, education, equality, equity, and the opportunity to pursue happiness based on our capabilities and abilities. That's what we all have in common. Let's begin from here by connecting and sharing what we know and our ideas and how to move forward. So here is an example and picture of equality. Everybody had the box there to look over the fence, but everyone has different height. The equity part, the difference, the equity that we all can see over the other side of the fence. So that's the difference between the equality and equity. So I will continue down, and our training priorities as a community organization center is to promote peace building, networking, and partnership for peace at the state and national level through a CMC, Community Mediation Center, in every county. Let's change the negative peace that we are living into a positive peace. Get involved, your community needs you. That's what we're doing. Training about local governance government structure, county and city level through a citizen academy. That's our goal. We will inform you about how the local government works for the community and the important position within it. Leadership in the community for transparency, checks and balance of local government through a human relation committee. We will provide you with all the information and tools to be a part of the leadership in your community. Get involved. That's our invitation. The 8 pillars of positive peace. And here you have it: well-functioning government, equitable distribution of resources, free flow of information, good relations with neighbors, high level of human capital, acceptance of the rights of others, low level of corruption, sound business environment. And those are the 8 pillars of having positive peace in our community. We had to work together in every community. By having a community mediation center in every county, we will be able to balance the needs of each of issues of every county. Again, as you mentioned, Chris and Dion, every county had different issues. We're all different, even though we have 159 counties in the state of Georgia. It's a lot of work that needs to be done. What is negative peace? And then we have the structural violence, the vertical violence, or horizontal violence. This is part of what I've been trained to do, and I can do and work with the community. And that's the goal of the ANGCMC, is to train the members of the community, every county. Here, effect of the structural violence, how affect the structural violence, a negative way, the community. Then who are we and why we do it? We are a group of professional peacemakers and peace builders with non-political intent, but with the mission to provide you with information, data, and critical skill to address conflict and promote peace. You will be empowered with tools to make your own informed decisions about daily and personal life issues, politics, or any conflict that you are confronted with. We're interested in peace building. What we will do for you, then we will provide service for the community facing tension or conflict based on their differences. And then I put the community relations services, I put there, you work, Dion, because it's important to us to connect with you and with the peace officers. It is one of the most important. The program that we are interested in working together, we can provide all those needs and services in community. So when the needs arrive in any county, you, Dion, with the CRS, will be able to have a trusting group of people in that county. What I did, I divided the state of Georgia in North, Middle, and South. 53 counties per section. So if we divide that, we'll be able, in CMC, in every county, we will be able to outreach everyone in that county, in the North, Middle, or South. But we need to work together. The importance of working together is there so that we can now reach a larger group of people. So that you, Dion, or you, Chris, with the peace officers, with POST, you have an issue in every county, you will have a place where we can trust each other. You will know exactly the issues affecting that community. And how I'm planning to do that, I have here divided every county. Okay, we'll have an administration's process: Walker County, Chattooga County, Floyd County, Polk County, and connect with the main organization, and each county is going to have an assistant, because each county is divided by district, and each district have an area. So if we can put somebody in those areas will connect with the officers or the person. Let's say you don't have an issue in District 3 of this county, of one county. You will know that there is a mediator that you can approach them. He will be able to provide you the information, the data at the local level. And you can trust and work together, and he will know all the authorities or community leaders of that area. If we can use this by using the media next door, Facebook, YouTube, those are very interesting, what you call the Nextdoor app, connect you with the needs of even each neighborhood. Each subdivision had different issues. There are some subdivisions, they are blue color, there are some white color. Well, each of those neighborhoods have different issues. So if you can connect with them, you will be able to participate, work with all of them. So there's my presentation. They are trying to do it quick and easy, but that was the importance of me participating with you guys and bring you on board, because I see the need to work, especially here in the state of Georgia. We have 159 counties. So creating a CMC in every county, it will be a source of information for the authorities to provide the solution that's needed in that particular county. And beyond, if it's anything, it will be a tool. We will be a tool for you to come and work with that community, with our organization, and with that in that particular county. So that's what I believe. Working together and connecting, it is important. And I appreciate your time and your dedication of what you do, guys. I'm very happy that you both are in our advisory board, and we need to stretch our effort and connection so that we can continue serving the community, because I know you guys as well as I do. It's in my DNA. I've been serving communities since I was 7 years old, with being a crossing guard in my country, and then joining the Navy for 12 years, and then come to the United States, my country of choice. And I'm proud and happy that Georgia has been my home and the state of the opportunity for me. And this country is the country of the opportunity for me, and I want to make a difference as well as you do. So let's work together, and thank you very much. If anybody has a question, please go ahead.
I just want to say, wow, it's been a pleasure to hear about Chris and Dion. I feel a privilege to have you guys here, because that was way more than my expectations of what we were going to hear today, and the feedback. And, you know, so I'm very glad to have you guys a part of our team, and I know we can do great things together. So thank you.
Thank you all for your presentation. Dion, I'm looking forward to your presentation, and so that we can share it too. And Chris, if you can send me also your presentation, I can share it. And I promise I won't stop. I promise you that I won't stop. I'm tired. I believe in what we're doing. I believe in the state of Georgia. I believe in what we have in the Constitution, and I take it at heart. So again, this is my country of choice, my state of choice, and it has been great to me, and I believe it has great to many others. So it is worth the effort. So thank you again, and I'm glad to have you on board.
Just one quick thing, you know, what strikes me is, you know, there's a saying, the sum is greater, or the whole is greater than the sum of the parts. And just hearing from Chris and Dion, small organizations that potentially working with other smaller groups can just provide so much more energy and power to what we're trying to do is just very eye-opening. And as you've been speaking, I've been trying to think of how I can add to just making more visible the work that both of you two are doing, and making you aware of the work that other smaller groups are doing. Thank you.
So if I may, just briefly, I really appreciate the comments from Kayla, Michael, Fernando, all of you. Just realizing that it is a small agency that I work with, and we could use all the help we can get in just letting folks know that this resource exists, and the need out there is far greater than the resources that have been assigned to address it. So we really do have to work as a team, which is why I'm very proud to be a part of this group. Thank you, Fernando, for creating it.
My pleasure. Thank you.
And Fernando, I would just say one thing that is an opportunity to possibly mediate. After Tuesday, about half of the state is going to be unhappy. I'm not sure which half, but half of them are going to be unhappy. And election offices are going to be, if 2020 was any guide, they're going to be besieged with people that are unhappy, that believe different things. So you know, this may be an opportunity for your organization to reach out to for the county people in each county, to reach out to their county election office and say, look, we could maybe host a forum where people could come together and they could have an opportunity to hear, you know, the truth and understand and learn more about the process. Because the fact is, very, very few people outside of elections understand how elections work and understand how tabulation works and how results are generated and all that kind of stuff. So there may be some really good educational opportunities where you can bring, you know, people together and say, look, we want to have a meeting or a forum for the community so we can explain everything that happened, regardless of what the results end up being, and say, this is how we did it, and this is how you can have confidence in what we did. You might not like the results, and you can certainly work politically to win better next time or do whatever you want to do, but we've got to keep the system and the people that operate it safe and secure and in you know, in high regard, so that even if you don't like the results, you know that you got a fair shot. And so that may be an opportunity, and you'll see the counties where where there are problems, and so you might want to encourage your county representatives to reach out to the election office and say, hey, I'd be happy to host a forum where we can bring different sides together and educate and explain and demystify and deconspiracy some of these things that will likely come up. Just an idea.
Great idea.
Excellent idea. Thank you very much. And I think that's what we need to do. We need to, because we are a small organization, we just getting started. You know, it's been a year since we started, and I think we need the support of each other. We can promote the CRS services with the post officer, and we can do it together. We can make a difference, and we just have to continue moving forward. I am looking for ways to fund some of these because, you know, funds are very important in order to reach every county, everywhere, and find the trainer, train the trainers. You know, we need to train the trainers and continue moving that way. And each of these gentlemen that here, Michael have an intense experience as a mediator, and you know, we are subject to confidentiality tools when we participate in situations and we can write agreements and all that. So we can be a great support to CRS here in the state of Georgia, and you don't have to any longer feel alone. You know what I mean? Is the same thing with Chris. Chris, with post officer, get to an area and a person come up with the card and say to the officer, I am a mediator, I'm with the CMC of this area. The officer won't feel threatened being approached, you know, and they can work together. That's the idea, to build trust and promote peace. Thank you, guys. To all of you, thank you for coming on board and participating. You are the biggest asset to us. Take care, have a good afternoon, and hopefully we'll see you again soon.
Pleasure meeting everyone. Thank you, gentlemen. Appreciate it.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.